All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. Here at Gaming Compute, we talk about finances and money and career and jobs and side hustles, sometimes financial news. There was something that I came across on Ken Coleman's podcast, and it was about social media, specifically TikTok, and how a person, I think in some type of tech work, got fired. Now I'm not like totally into drama of things, but I felt like it was a topic that was a little worth expanding on a little bit, especially considering that, you know, I do podcasting on here, and so you can listen to the episode by Ken Coleman, but so there was this he was mentioning about Gen Z, so it was kind of an important topic about like the differences in communication between millennials and Gen Z, and maybe even like I guess Gen X and boomers and things like that, you know, like kind of the different kind of groups of people. And I'm going to talk about that on another podcast, just related to communication in general. But I'm never here to be like bashing Gen Z. I think every group has their own costs and benefits to the ways they communicate, right? I can kind of see that. And so he was mentioning, just as like an observation, not a criticism, but an observation, that he was on a vacation or something with one of his daughters, who's maybe like a teen now or something, or maybe in her early college days, and they were all in a group together, and he was kind of just like noticing how they were communicating, how they had smartphones, they were kind of taking selfies and like on their phones and then communicating in between, and some of them were like posting maybe TikToks or whatever they were posting directly based on something that somebody else had just said. So that was kind of his observation in general in his real life. I'm not saying that that's the only style of communication, like it can't be like that all day every day, right? But people were doing that he noticed, and it might have just been like a short segment of time. It may not have been the entire day, but he just kind of mentioned that. And then he goes from there and mentions this, he shows a video clip after explaining that this TikTok content creator named itslexilarson. So itslexilarson. Basically, I think she was hired in a tech industry job of some form. I'm going based on my memory here. And she had an experience with the job site where she was getting offered a certain amount of money, was making a certain amount of income, salary, and then was able to increase the salary. So he mentioned that she say it was somewhere around like $75K that she was going to be making, and then she figured she was going to make more than that, like I guess over $100K or something like that, from what my memory, from what I recall. I was listening to this morning, and then she basically ends up realizing after some time, that she maybe shouldn't have posted that, took down the content, and then, eventually, I guess her boss had come across the content, or somebody high up in the company, and had come across it, and she ends up losing her job, even though she took the post down. She loses her job and ends up, going back onto TikTok and explaining, like, the process of her losing her job, like, why and all that kind of stuff. And so I think I find that interesting. There were a couple points that he mentioned, like she noticed maybe that after she had posted that it was, maybe not the best idea, and so she took it down. And then she mentioned, Ken Coleman's mentioning this, that, maybe, I don't know if this was for certain or maybe, but I took it as like maybe she wasn't, like she was basically let go, but the company was kind of saying like, well, maybe we don't really trust you as much, or something along those lines. Like they either had like a trust issue or couldn't like fully, support her keeping the job, because it was kind of like, well, what might you breach later? Like they saw it as like a risk of breaching confidential information. Now, I don't think that she actually breached confidential information, but I think because she posted and was talking about something that was not quite crossing the line, but was kind of like maybe like a sensitive topic, that they were kind of like, this is kind of too close to take too many chances on. Now, that seems like it was a judgment call on their end. They were kind of like thinking about the future of what it would look like to keep her on, based on her, posting information about the job site. And I'm pretty sure this happens more than we hear about. Let me take some coffee sips here. Pretty sure this happens more than we hear about, but I thought it was an interesting little topic of conversation, because it's like, it's hard enough to come by work. It's hard enough to come by an ideal job that's going to pay you enough that you can live off of, that's stable and, kind of checks all your boxes, and of course, when you find something good, you want to share it, especially when it's financial related stuff. So, for example, on this podcast here on Game and Compute, I'm often sharing about finances and different types of stuff. I don't list exactly how much I make. I don't talk about where I work. I do talk about certain cities that I'm usually in, and general stuff like that, just because I do feel like it matters talking about the city, because if I'm between San Diego and Los Angeles, the cost of living, the expenses that we experience don't necessarily reflect the majority of the United States or the world even. And so I do think, sometimes when I'm giving numbers, like when I say like, okay, a person living in San Diego to afford a $1,500 a month apartment needs to be bringing home $4,500, like that's not the same number in every city. So it's kind of stuff like that where I'm kind of like, I do kind of need to say that, because the market in different cities is kind of different. But also, I'm not speaking to my income. I'm not speaking to, where I work, who I work for, I don't mind talking about the type of work I do. But other than that, that's about, as much as I'm willing to really share. The way I kind of think of things is, I think about if my boss comes across the podcast, or if my roommate, or if my family member, or if my friend, or if my, potential future employer comes across my podcast, is there anything that they would come across where they would say, ooh, I hear you talking like this about them or about us, what could you possibly do next? I've always kind of had that on my mind. Now, it is a fine line, and it is actually, it does take some discipline to not want to vent and air all the details of everything. I do think it's possible to share about your personal life without adding so many details that you're easily detected and identified and easily visible, and that somebody would get offended. Like, now that's, to say anybody can get offended by anything, even if you mean well. Like the other day, for example, there was a friend that I was reconnecting with, or making plans to reconnect with, because like I mentioned, I'm in a different city, and there's a friend that I was reconnecting with, who we hadn't actually seen each other, but we'd been planning to meet up. And I just threw something out there where where they were like, do you want to meet up, or like we should hang out? And I was like, yeah, we should hang. And then after that, I was like, I just don't want to, encounter XYZ type of, situation. Like, usually around I'm not really into gossip and things like that. Like, I didn't want to just, like, in my mind, that was just the first thing that came to my mind, so I mentioned it. Now, I wasn't trying to start an argument, I wasn't trying to be offensive, but I kind of realized after a while, I was like, oh, that was taken very wrong, and it made it sound almost like I was saying I don't want to hang out, like I don't want to do anything together, and that I was calling out like a specific situation involving that person. Now, that was not my intention, but literally that's been my hesitation to reconnect with a lot of the people where I'm locally at lately. A lot of the time has been because I do have a lot of valuable, healthy relationships, and these people, have not necessarily directly always been a part of gossiping, but they're part of a culture that we all grew up in, a religious culture we all grew up in, where it was almost socially acceptable for people to be able to be gossiping. And I never was interested in that. I'm not saying I never do, but I never was interested in that. I actually found it pretty toxic and unhealthy, and it negatively impacted my life. So when I was seeking new friend groups, that was something that I found that I valued, was that I was able to find people that you could tell confidential things to, that you weren't going to find it on somebody's Facebook wall somewhere, or like on TikTok or whatever, or some other, what usually would get me is like, because everyone was always so social, interacting between different groups of people, and so people would know other people from different parts of the city because everyone was like part of this religion, and people would intermingle with like other groups and other churches and whatnot. And so when somebody came up and they would say, I don't like, when people would come up to me and say, to me, like, oh yeah, like how's this going in your life, or like this situation ABC going in your life, or like how's that person X that or like what's going on with this situation. Like, it would be stuff that's like, well, I never talked to these people directly about those things, and so why do they know about it, and why are they coming to me about it? And it wasn't even always like big stuff that it was like confidential things or stuff that should have been kept private. It was sometimes stuff that was just like general. But it's like, oh, like, say for example, you get into a school or something, and then all of a sudden everybody knows like what school you're in. Like, that's good news, but it's like, that you never told everybody that, you told one person, now everybody knows. So things like that, right? And so I think about things like that, and then I think about, okay, that's how I just described that situation on here, right? It has nothing to do with anything. I'm using it kind of as an example. That's how I described that situation on here. Now, if any of those specific friends from any of my upbringing that I've been wanting to reconnect and who I've been in touch with and who have been wanting to hang out came across this podcast episode and listened to that specific information that I just said, people might speculate who I'm talking about or what I'm talking about, but the amount that I just shared didn't reveal anything about that individual person or the specific people. It was no personal information. It was mostly me talking about what I said, right? I said, this is what I said to that person, and that's why and the reasons why I said it based on like our history together with groups of different people and the culture of the groups and stuff like that, the religious culture and kind of like the social culture, right? So it's like, I think if someone comes across something like that and they hear that I'm talking about my personal experience from my perspective, what I said, what I did, how I kind of noticed that it wasn't perceived maybe right because of my communication being too short, like I kind of just wrote 2 sentences and then it was taken to like, it's like, okay, I noticed that that's confusing because it sounds like I'm saying, okay, maybe I want to hang out, but actually no, let's not hang out because you gossip too much. That's what it sounds like. That's not exactly what I meant. That's not exactly what I said. I was just putting out like a disclaimer, like, hey, we don't really hang out that much anymore. And I'm kind of creating a healthier life for myself. Like, I did eventually have to give a lengthy explanation. I was like, I've met a lot of people. I don't really tend to want to be in toxic relationships or environments or social settings with people. Therefore, I am putting it out there that this is kind of the boundaries I would like to set. Let's not sit around and just trash people if we're going to meet up. And so I'm okay sharing on that level, When it gets to be something past that, name dropping, specific information. Now I feel, and this is just me, my own personal opinion. This is my own personal opinion. If somebody scams you, if somebody is trying to get over on you and manipulate you, or if someone's being abusive towards you, and you feel like you want to share that, I feel like you have every right to share it. I know it's maybe not always the smartest thing. It's good to use caution because people might try to use things against you, and make sure you understand the rules related to slander. But if somebody is taking advantage of you and you are a victim in a situation, I personally don't see anything wrong with talking about your situation of somebody else doing something wrong towards you. That's, in my opinion, that's my limit. So I feel like if you're at a job or at a site where they're manipulating you or they're doing something wrong, like I'm not going to say if you post something you're going to not lose your job, or that someone's not going to come after you because you're putting the information out there, or that it might make your situation worse. It might actually make your situation worse. But I'm just saying, like, I don't believe that victims have to be silent. That's not my belief at all. I do understand that there is risk when you're a victim. I do understand that there's a risk, when you're online, and there's always this risk involved, right? But that's kind of my personal, to me, that I don't think everybody has to subscribe to my opinions, but that's my personal opinion. If, it's up to people if they want to share that, if they're being victimized. But if you're a victim in a situation, I don't feel like you have to keep your mouth shut because you're already a victim. If somebody's taking advantage, if there's companies not paying you and they need to be paying you and they're not, and you're trying to get legal support and nobody's helping and there's nothing available, I don't think it's a bad thing to call out those companies. I mean, that's just my own opinion. Like, that's how I view things. If nobody's doing anything wrong, if nobody's being abusive and manipulative or anything like that, then I think that's where I kind of draw the line. to talk about things. It's like, yes, this is a breach of confidentiality. Yes, this is a problem. Yes, this is, an issue. I can see that, I can see that. That's kind of my personal opinion on it. And that's kind of how I decide how I post things. Now, sometimes I might be like in an emotional mood, either like too hyper from the caffeine, or, and a little impulsive because of it, or, a little hurt by something somebody did or said, or a little like confused by a situation. So I'm kind of like brainstorming, like talking it through. And, that's when things can kind of more easily slip. But I would say that's kind of the line that I draw. That's kind of the line that I draw. And I've never really even thought about it till now. I was like, how do I decide what I do or don't post about? That's usually how I make my decision. I'm not saying my way is better or more right than anyone else's, but I mean, if somebody wanted to fire me over the stuff that I post, I don't think they would really have reason to do so, because I'm not mentioning anything that would jeopardize anything or anyone. I'm not slandering anybody. I'm talking about my own personal experiences with things or news or speculating about stuff, which is my opinions based on what I've witnessed and things like that. And a lot of it, I don't really talk about specific companies I've worked with anyways. I just kind of talk more about things that I think would help people. Now, this person whose TikTok handle is itslexilarson, I feel like her intentions were good because she was trying to help people make more money. And in that process, she was trying to maybe help her ratings or views or money to go up through TikTok. Possibly, I don't know. But she did seem to have some good judgment because she took it down. But the good judgment seems like it kind of came like a little later. And I think that's hard. I mean, I'm not trying to even like judge her. I'm just saying it's a tough situation because everybody wants to help somebody. If I came across a method of how to get an extra 25 plus grand a year, I mean, that's like a yearly salary for somebody already. For some people, 25 grand can be, a full-on salary in some states if you're around minimum wage, maybe even a little over minimum wage. If you're making about 13 or so an hour, that's almost like 25 grand, almost. And so, that's already like it's almost a full-time minimum job pay wage for like a year. So it's not bad, terrible money. It's not it's not a low amount of money, that could really be game changing for a lot of people, life changing for a lot of people. And so to be able to do even what she posted, I don't really know exactly the whole length of what she posted or all of it. Like, I haven't searched it or anything, but like I kind of don't really do the TikTok thing, but mostly just because I'm learning about it more. I'm trying to learn more about it, but I'm getting a little suspicious of these terms and conditions of different companies. And when Joe Rogan had somebody on talking about, TikTok and all the terms and conditions and stuff. And I was like, let me start looking more into these social media sites before I opt in. But yeah, I started noticing that, and I started realizing, just those different kind of topics that I just brought up. And I feel like Lexi Larson, meant well. I wish her the best. It does kind of suck too that, it's that it's maybe like published in the media about her. And TikTok has your face on there, and then she posted a follow-up video, so she still got her face on TikTok. So for future hires, I don't know how that's gonna be, but I mean, I do wish her the best, and I do think, unfortunately, when things like that happen, a lot of us have to learn from those situations. But something about that was valuable to me to hear, because I was like, okay, it's good to keep things in check just so it doesn't get out of hand, and kind of set boundaries for yourself so that you're able to do things, authentically according to your own values. And according to, your values also will need to align with like some of your company values, because, you can't just be really doing absolutely whatever you want, and have somebody see it and then maybe they might get offended, or they might fire someone or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of how I think about things. And it's not like I really know, 100% like that I would be safe even with my own methods, but it's kind of like, that's the best that I can do as far as sharing my opinions about this type of a topic, especially as podcasting is so famous. TikTok is, you can easily get viral content with TikTok, and like, everybody's just trying to get theirs, and so I understand, it can be very tempting to want to just like post something that is going to get views, and that is going to help people, and that kind of is, your audience would really gravitate towards it. But be careful out there, because nobody wants their reputation ruined, or job opportunities either taken or not given because of something on social media, which it's a choice to post things, but once it's posted, people are even like reposting, like posting stuff about what she said. Like, I'm posting stuff about what she did. Ken Coleman did, post stuff about what she did. I'm pretty sure, if she comes up again, applying for another tech job or something, it's possible that others might know what she did or find out what she did. I wouldn't want that for anybody. I wouldn't want that for myself. I don't even want it for her. I would like for her to even have an opportunity to get that job back, because it sounds like a good paying job. I mean, I'm always happy when I hear about people getting good jobs and like good pay, and it's like, yeah, they're going to be fine now, like everything's going to be good now. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, to lose your job over something that is so controllable. And so, you can kind of see the intention behind it, that she wasn't, I mean, I don't know what she did to get more money, if it was like a scammy thing or whatever. I really don't know. I don't even want to, maybe I shouldn't even say it like that, because it's kind of like assuming that she did something wrong. I'm not really into like blaming the victim about things. Like, she seems to have just maybe lost an opportunity from making a decision that wasn't even a fully clearly poor decision. Like, it's not like she was breaking specific company rules or like said some kind of really sensitive information that was like not supposed to be shared, but they just were a little worried. And so yeah, so that's what I've got to share for right now. But I hope everybody's doing good, and hopefully this food for thought is helpful. Thanks for listening.